What is ISO? ISO is a function on your camera that artificially increases the brightness of a photo you take or a video you take. Every single camera is going to have a base ISO. So my Canon 80D, for example, has a base ISO of 100 and it maxes out at 16,000. But most entry-level DSLRs are going to have a range of anywhere from 100 to 6400. ISO should only be used to brighten your image when everything else is maxed out. So when your shutter speed is as low as it can go, allowing more light onto the sensor, and when your aperture is as wide as it can go to allow more light to hit your sensor. Because raising your ISO when you take a picture has a nasty side effect. It makes a lot of noise in your photo. It creates a lot of grain. If you look at the picture of this little Mustang Hot Wheels car, for example, taken at 100 ISO, you'll see there's virtually no grain at all, and it looks like a completely normal photo. But then raised to 6400 ISO, you'll notice there's a lot of grain in the photo. There are ways to get around raising your ISO to be high. For example, if you lower the shutter speed as much as possible, as low as it will go. If you're shooting handheld, that's somewhere around 1/60th of a second before you start to induce camera shake in your photos. Lowering the shutter speed allows more light, more time for light to hit the sensor, and so you don't have to artificially increase the brightness of the photo as much. And then with aperture, of course, widening the aperture as wide as possible is going to allow the most amount of light to hit the sensor, and having your aperture as low as possible means you don't have to raise your ISO as high as possible. If you want to change the ISO while you're taking a picture, most cameras are going to have a little button on the screen somewhere that says ISO, and then a sliding adjustable scale where you can increase it or decrease it to whatever you want. If you're shooting outside, you're gonna mostly wanna stick to base ISO, which is gonna be 100 or 200, depending on the camera you have. You really don't need to raise it if you're shooting in natural daylight, natural sunlight. But if you're shooting inside or you're shooting in less light and you do want to make the photo a bit brighter and your shutter speed is already as low as it can possibly go and your aperture is already as wide as it can possibly go, then raising your ISO is not a bad idea.